research. One is that when they diagnosed my son with a condition that they said he'd never recover from, and he had seizures and other things that were going on, and they said you can expect a life of this. The first shocking thing was to realize there was so much evidence to the contrary, so much science, so much logic, so much common sense that was available to help him recover, and he did. And then I came across that most people are suffering from the same things. Today, we've helped a lot of people, pulling these things out of people and watching them see who they really are.
Welcome to the Vitality Secret Podcast. I'm delighted to be here with Stan Kurtz in Simi Valley, who is an inventor, a researcher, and he's enabled me to do rather remarkable things with my body, which I'll get into in just a moment. Before we do, welcome Stan. So happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here, Neil.
Or rather, I'm happy to be here
I'm
in your place.
happy to have you in our place.
So I've just finished another, 2.5 days here, and I was here in February. We met at the Conscious Life Expo, and it was a rather very serendipitous reason we met. I was actually directed to go and see him talk at, just by a friend of mine who I happened to see at an event about 8 years ago. She said, make sure you go and see Stan Kurtz. So I did. Saw him talk. I saw his heart. I saw everything he's been doing for his son and for so many people since then. And a lot around live blood analysis and all the methods and processes to create balance in the blood from then. So, Stan, over to you. What got you into everything you're doing right now?
Well, it was my son to begin with. Growing up, my grandmother was somebody that I was very interested in, and she was sick when I was like 6, right around the time when she passed, and I think she had cancer. So I saw that, and I think that was part of the opening for me. And then when I was 10, my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer, and she was the one that I connected with the most. She's the one that understood me the most. So from age 10 to 15, I saw her go through chemo and radiation, and basically just, saw her taken, and that the system didn't save her, and it was heartbreaking for me. And a lot of my original traumas were all around that, and that affected me for a really long time. But that was sort of the beginning, and I think a lot of people that I look to as masters of the past in health usually have something that woke them up. Something substantial that woke them up, whether their own illness or, in this case, an illness of my child, because I got married and immediately had my son, and then he became really sick, and around 18 and 20 months old, he was diagnosed with PDD-NOS, which is like early autism. You can't really get an autism diagnosis by DSM-4 at the time until you turn 3. But it was autism spectrum, and with that, I ended up, after being depressed and at home, and somebody convinced me to go to a conference, and that conference had a scientist, which I didn't expect, put up a slide that showed that kids with autism have high copper levels. And I was like, why would they have high copper levels? The diagnosis I got was, he has autism, he has seizures, you can expect this to be a very difficult life, and buckle down and expect it. And that's kind of the mindset that I accepted for a little while. And then when I saw that one study on the screen, when that researcher put it up on the screen, I remember thinking, what does that have to do with autism? It's a neurological disorder. That's a biological issue. And as I was sitting there and he was talking, I was like, are these kids sick? And because they don't speak, they're not being taken care of. And I went up to him afterwards. I went up to him and I said, look, are you saying that you just need to add zinc because there's a copper to zinc ratio? You just need to give 25 milligrams of zinc to reduce the copper, and that's he's like, yeah, that's my talk. And I said, okay, well, how many studies are there like these? Are there many? And he's like, there's a lot. So he introduced me to this woman named Teresa Binstock, who was a woman with Asperger's, and she was a researcher, an independent researcher, and she was at the conference, and he walked me over to her and introduced me, and I said to Teresa, I want to find every one of these effing studies that show these kids are sick. And she was an expert in that. And she's like, sure, I'll help you, but I'm going to charge you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, $10 an hour. And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. And it turned out she lived in Estes Park, Colorado in a trailer. And she lived very minimally. She just had internet connection, her laptop, some food, and she just lived a really simple life. So I basically said, okay, I'm going to take care of your expenses, which wasn't much, and just teach me everything you can. And then from that, I learned how to find the studies in the medical literature. And then word by word, I was learning the language that were in the studies. So I had to figure out what allele lymphoid nodular hypoplasia was one word at a time and know that, it's an inflammation that creates a nodule inside your ileum. It took me 18 months, and I went through all the studies. There were 750, and I had to purchase them. I had to get them sometimes through universities, download them, print them at the time. And it was like I had a home office about the size of this, and everywhere was like studies just on, every flat surface. And, sometimes I didn't even shower, or I was in my pajamas, and I was just reading and reading and reading. And I didn't work during the time. That was it. I just woke up, and that was like my life's mission. And what I ended up finding was after a while, my brain works in patterns, and I'm really good with numbers. So I don't have a photographic memory, but I remember the numbers in those studies. Like I know the average person has 3.8 micrograms per gram of mercury coming out of their body through their hair, and then the average child has 0.47. So they have a detoxification problem in mercury because you're breathing mercury. If in the air, you're breathing mercury, you're excreting mercury all the time. So those kids don't excrete a lot of certain heavy metals and a lot of others, high amounts of uranium if you live in California because it's in the water. So these studies raised lots of questions, lots of interesting things to buckle in on. And at the time, I didn't believe anything at that point. I didn't want to believe anyone, because when I saw that one study and I'm like, wait, these kids are sick, I knew I was just being lied to. I knew that I wasn't getting the information, and I knew, and I knew I had to figure this out. So, and I didn't know what the end game was going to be, but I just knew I had to just dig in.
What was your son doing at this point?
He was speech, occupational, physical, and behavioral therapy.
At which age?
Well, I went from 20 months to 36 months. So by the time he turned 3, he had 750 hours of speech, occupational, physical, and behavioral therapies.
Wow. So he was dysfunctional. He wasn't able to function.
No, he was still in a diaper. He had many seizures.
Where is she? Can you look at Nora?
Where's Nora's eyes? Whoa.
That's interesting.
He's been doing that.
Sensory integration dysfunction. He had distended belly, dark puffy eyes, right side muscle weakness, floppy child syndrome. And that's just some. But yeah, he was pretty blown out. Yeah. So when after I read the studies, I started categorizing and I started to see patterns. And really, I was able to break down those 750 studies into like 6 or 7 areas, which is infections, toxins, inflammation, nutritional deficiencies, and immune dysregulation. That was pretty much it. So once I had it in those piles, I started looking at it like, wait, this is kind of consumable. And then from that, I said, okay, well, what tests can you run to figure out the signature pattern of my specific child? Which one have the hair analysis? Which one has the organic acid test by urine? Which is the IgG food allergy by blood? There are different labs that have those different things. Some required scripts, some the labs would give it to you. So I had to navigate all that. And then I got my son's labs, and I could see what was irregular, his particular signature pattern. I could see what the medical literature was indicating for kids that were on the spectrum. And there was so much evidence. There was so much science. That was shocking to me, because my pediatrician, even when I went back to him, I put together a whole thing. I gave him a copy, and I said, look, and it took me 2 weeks to make that. I did it for the developmental pediatrician and for the pediatrician. And both of them, I could see they didn't know how to consume the information, even when I put it in front of them. And I said, you know what, maybe they're not going to understand it, so I'll make a video. So I walked them through in a video format those studies and the conclusions and what I was going to do, what the approach was. And basically, like for the pediatrician, especially for my wife, I was saying, I'm going to show you this, and I want you to let my wife know if you think there's anything that would harm him. You don't have to believe in what I'm doing, but you can be the keeper of harm for. So he was like, I used him for just to assure my wife that a high dose of vitamin C wasn't going to harm his brain. Wow. That type of thing. And then I had certain physicians I would go to for certain approaches because I didn't have the tools I had today. So I was using Western medicine for some of it back then with, some doctors believed in a viral connection. So I would get antivirals from one doctor. I would get antifungals from another doctor because fungus, virus, bacteria, those things were showing up in the studies like crazy. So, and a lot of the behaviors you were starting to see were derivatives that were downstream of infections. And I thought, that's interesting. A behavior could be caused by an infection. And I see this so frequently today in just regular humans. So that's how I started working on him. And that was, I basically took 18 months to research and not touch him from that perspective. And then when he turned 3, essentially on his birthday, I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with food. We're going to pull out some things that seemed to be bothering him, that he had IgG food allergy test results that showed certain foods that feed bacteria and fungus. We found that science. And then foods that we know feed the body, very simple foods, it's like, protein, vegetables, and some fruit. And that's about it, some nuts. It's really simple. I called it the caveman diet at the time. And then we started doing that within 2 weeks. And my wife was a skeptic. And in a way, I was born as someone that believed in the system to some degree. I mean, we took him to the pediatrician. I was a workaholic at the time, and I believed in everything.
What was your job at the time? Because it wasn't this, was it?
No. I was, let's see, back then, it's hard to tell because I've had so many sort of iterations of my life, but it was probably in some sort of technology or sales. 2001, I was actually, it was a company called Part Miners. So we were buying and selling electronic parts, and we were creating a marketplace for trading electronic components for companies that were manufacturing and couldn't find parts.
I asked that question to see how your brain works. Because I've always seen you as an engineering type, root cause type problem solver.
Yes. I would say that about me too. I think as a problem solver, there's been problem solving in every iteration, but there's a lot of these different verticals that I've been in, whether it's like sports or not specific sports, but exercise or whatever I was involved in. I've always been very, just looking at things very logically and problem solving ever since I was a kid, 6 years old.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So going back to what you were just saying, and just before you go to the next part, there's another part of this story that really kind of touched me, and it's around an agreement you made with larger intelligence.
Yeah.
If you could help your son.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So what had happened was there were different phases. We started with diet. It was safe and effective first, and the safest things are going to be food. Then the next thing would be supplements. And then the next thing is when we started getting into antifungals. At the time, it was difluconazole, Sporanox, and amphotericin B. So these are medications for that.
I see.
We have natural things today that are amazing and fantastic. We have I'm not involved in any medicine in any way, shape, or form today. But for my son, that's the best thing that was there. And some people said, well, you're going to go to Western medicine. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't care about any of that. I just care about whatever's best for my son or whatever is best for the person in front of me. So we went through that, and he had some, healing, die-off kind of thing, and then we went to antivirals, and that was before doing chelation and other things, which were getting more and more, I would say, you had a higher risk of something happening that could work against you or work against him.
Do you want to explain chelation quickly?
Chelation is just, these are binders that you can put in the body that will essentially bind themselves onto heavy metals, which are bound to other tissues and things in the body, because metals essentially they don't stay in the blood for the most part. They attach themselves to tissues in the body. So mercury binders or chelators will attach to the metal and then disable that from hanging on and be able to pull that out of the body. So that's what they do. They're like metal sponges essentially, and depending on the agent, it's going to adhere better to certain types of metals. There are ones for mercury and aluminum and other things. So that's a chelation agent, but it also pulls out minerals. And if you're going to do something like that and something that can pass the blood-brain barrier, I knew there was some risk of harm in doing that if you were putting it in orally or by blood. So that was further on down the line in regards to the protocol of safety as far as I was seeing it for my son. But I was right before that, which was in antivirals. And as I was doing that, in the second week or so, I saw these really unique things coming from him. I saw eye contact. I saw some socialization that he didn't have, some language he didn't have.
Coming back
at the same time, developing.
Wow.
At the same time, he got worse in a lot of other areas too. And it came to the point that the crux of it is where he's still in diapers, and he reached into a diaper and he was poop smearing, which he had never done before. And that is, some children with autism are known to have done that. But not him until then. And my wife at the time looked at me and she said, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" And I looked back at her and I said, "Yeah." And I thought about it. I looked at her. I said, "Yes, I do." And then right after that, I went into a room and I cried because I just lied to her essentially, and I was over my head in a way. That's how it felt. And I don't ever want to be that person, or be in that situation, but I was, and I'm vulnerably saying what happened. And then I actually had a very genuine prayer to God, and I basically said, I mean, the truth is, I said, "Look, don't F me on this one." I said, "Please," and I said, "Help me recover my son, and if you do, I will take care of whoever you put in front of me." And that was my commitment. And I guess I meant it, because I keep doing that. And I think prayer in general has to have a real commitment behind it. I'm still emotional over that. But it has to be real. And I'm watching myself, and I see time after time whoever's in front of me, I'm basically treating them like I would my own son. Yeah. You know, they come in and I'm just 100% to whoever's in the chair. Yeah. I'm gonna have the same mindset as an approach I had for my son. So what ended up happening, we started in June on his birthday. By November, he had completely recovered from the symptoms that we saw. Energetically, I saw the day. In the morning, I saw him, and I remember I looked at him in the morning, and I go, I don't know if it's my imagination or not, but he no longer looks like energetically that he has autism. And I did it, I was, a guy with a camera and a kid, so I filmed him most of that day because I thought it was so remarkable. And that night, we were in pajamas, and we were about ready to read, and we had a housekeeper at the time. The housekeeper was in the space, was in his room with me, and he had this doggy music box, and he pulls down the legs of the music box, and he goes, "What is this?" Now, he has never asked me a question like that, ever. It was so out of character. And anyone that's been sort of trained about autism is, if you understand behavioral therapy, you don't ask a child a question. You give statements and you invite them to things, but you don't say, "Hey, do you want to go for a drive?" You say, "Let's go for a drive. Let's play with this." Okay. So you don't ask questions. It's a whole different part of the brain that they have difficulty processing. Okay. So... And it's in humans, I think, in general, like that. But for them, they're more sensitive to it. So he asked me, "Do you like music?" And I was so in shock that he asked it. I said, "Yeah, do you like music?" And immediately I said to myself, "Why did you do that?" Yeah. Like, why? And so I'm judging myself for a second. And then he goes, well, no, first he says, "What is this?" And I said, "A doggy." He points at me and he goes, "A doggy." And he nods. And I'm like, he just told me I got it right. Like a teacher.
Oh, I see.
And he goes, "Do you like music?" Question 2. And I said, "Yeah, I like music. Do you like music?" Because I didn't even know what to say. And he turns and he looks away and he looks back at me and he says, "Do you want to dance?"
That better?
That's nice.
Look at this one. What is this? What is this?
It's a doggy.
A doggy. Do you like music?
I like music. Do you like music?
Dance?
Okay, let's dance.
Come on, dance with me. And I remember that night, I'm putting him to bed, and I remember I'm not wanting him to go to sleep in a way, because something in me is like, oh, if he goes to sleep and wakes up and then he has autism again, I was like, please let this be okay in the morning. And it was, and he was fine, and he had what I would call a frozen brain for 18 months, so he had catching up to do, but he was no longer like his peers, and I tracked this. we're doing this, and he was going across like this, and over time the gap was getting bigger. And then he just was like this, and then...
So his peers' learning abilities, his is staying like this.
Yeah, his was growing, but at a much lower rate, and over time that just keeps opening up.
Yeah.
So you see the gap, and I remember his neighbor was the same age, and at one point Ethan like pointed at the bird or something, and I was just like, oh wow, that's really exciting. And then Sophie was his friend from next door, and she went over and goes, oh my God, look at the birds going back and forth, and I just sat there like, oh, wow, it was just so clear how big the gap was at the time. And they're still friends today, which is really amazing. But yeah, so once he had that, we held him 1 year extra in kindergarten. He did that twice, and then at that point he was really close. So and then he just went off to school. And when he went off to school and was doing fine, I was at home by myself going, okay, now what? I'm like by myself going, my whole life was revolved around this. I don't want to go back to work because in my mind, capitalism hurt my son.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I don't want to go back and sell something so I could not go back to the business that I had been in, the businesses I'd been in. So I said to myself, okay, well, what are the criteria? I want to work with kids. I want to continue where my head was like a machine consuming studies. I'm like, I just wanted to sit there and read studies. Some people, like Dad used to read the newspaper. I'm like, give me a study. I want to understand things. So like, what could I do with kids that I could continue to, because I wanted to stay in the age group of him too. Even though I couldn't see him at school, at least I, stick with the age group. So what made sense to me is I bought a preschool, which is the last thing I ever thought I would do. So I bought a preschool kindergarten.
You bought a school?
Ages 2 through 6, with 45 kids. Mm-hmm. And then what happened was I was seeing in these kids little symptoms of Ethan. I knew Ethan's symptoms inside out. In fact, that's about all I knew. But I was seeing like asthma and irritability and eczema and speech delay. Now, he had all those things. He was born with eczema. And so for me, I'm making connections. I'm going, well, that's a piece of Ethan. That's a piece of Ethan. That's a piece of Ethan. And then there's a child with autism. And that's how the preschool looked to me. It was like all kids that had little pieces of them. So at some point, it's weird. There's so many awarenesses that I have. But one weird thing is that if you have a preschool license, especially I know in California, in order for you to have the license, you have to give milk. You have to give wheat. You had to at the time follow the food pyramid. And if someone came to check your school for licensing purposes, they go straight to the refrigerator the first thing. They didn't go to the backyard to see if there was some chain around some kid's neck or if some teacher was beating some child. No, they go straight to the refrigerator. They check the refrigerator to see if you have milk, or else you could lose your license. Crazy.
Wow.
So,
and those two ingredients are normally the first two I suggest to my clients to remove.
Yeah, of course. And I knew that at that point. Yeah. And then I'm like, this is crazy. Yeah. And then it wasn't long before I'm like, well, these kids on the spectrum, I'm not there to diagnose them, but I know that pattern. So I would say to the parents, look, my child used to look like yours and have behaviors like yours. And I did some things that were natural that helped them. Would you be interested? And everyone was a yes. And then when I went down and I talked to them about my son and what we did, everyone said, okay, I'll try the diet.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so we had a diet in the school for those kids. And the parents would sign off saying, our kids are allergic. And that was the way I could do it legally, was if in the fine print it says you have to feed by the food pyramid unless the child's allergic. So the parents would sign off saying they're allergic. And in science it said they were, because you can't digest milk unless you have 4 stomachs and 20 times the amount of digestive enzymes as a human. Unless you're a cow. And even then, how many cows have a 6-pack? They're not digesting it well themselves. Right. So what I ended up doing is started feeding those kids those foods, and they were getting better. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. But one day, what happened was, a couple things happened at the same time. I walked into one of the classrooms, and one of the kids with autism that had their food did this with the macaroni and cheese right off of somebody's plate, and the only person that saw it was me. And I just saw that as it was like a slap in the face. I'm like, this isn't working. This isn't going to work. And the message I got from that was, it needs to be all the kids. And I was going to sleep at night, like having trouble, I'm kind of, in a way, I'm involved in hurting the kids by enabling this. I'm an enabler. And I started talking to my wife, had a preschool at the time herself, and her family's been in that business a long time. I'm like, I don't think I can do this. I think I need to introduce this to the entire school. And she said, you'll lose everybody, you'll lose your business. And it's understandable from her perspective that she was thinking that. And other people said the same thing. You're crazy, don't do it. You're going to lose your school. And I sat with that for a couple of days, and I just said at one point, I'm like, I can't do this. If I have to lose a school, I'll lose a school. If I don't try, it will always haunt me. And if they're not ready for it, then I'll sell the school and just let it be a school and let somebody else do it and have it not be on my karma. So there was and this was a lower middle income area where it's like I was the minority of the school, as a white guy, if you want to call me that, I was the minority in the school. And I was presenting to people that people said to me, those people aren't going to understand. And that rang in my head, and I'm like, I want to test that. So I presented to that school, the whole school, all the parents, as if I was presenting at scientific conferences, which I was at the time. So I had those same slides, and I just organized it in a specific way, just about the foods and the GI tract and the bacteria and the fungus and the relationship to the body and what the science was saying and what my experience was and what we had anecdotes for. And I presented to them like I would be presenting to a group of scientists and doctors. And all of them signed. Not one didn't. I didn't lose one person. In fact, the school got packed. And we went from 45 to 50. I had to, I increased the license, and I was busy. We were just busy. And every day there were parents coming in, giving me reports about their kids getting better. And then something happened that changed everything for me. There was a dad that walked in that said, I used to have a headache for like 10 years and I don't anymore. And I'm like, well, what would you do different? He goes, the whole house is doing the diet.
Nice.
And then I was like, wow. So one after the other, we're seeing asthma, eczema, chronic fatigue in parents, fibromyalgia. This stuff starts disappearing. And
that's just nutrition.
That was just nutrition, because I wasn't going to do anything more in the school, because to me it's over the line to even give a vitamin to a kid. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I just wanted to do it based on food. So that it was interesting, because it really buckled down my skill level in looking at the foods and the science of the foods and testing it. So what ended up happening was, when I bought the school, there were 77 prescription medications when I bought it that were given to 45 kids across 12 months. Because you have to track that. Damn. You have to track it, because you can't just give a drug to a kid without a prescription. So we had the prescription, 77 prescriptions for 45 kids. Once I changed the foods, the following year with 50 kids, I had 7.
No
way. So I tracked. Yeah, it was just based on feeding them right. And
my goodness,
the other
food could be so
right. yeah. And the other thing that really that impacted me was that there was a little girl who I was playing with the day before in the classroom, and she just loved. She had a great time. The class, everybody had. I never taught in the classroom, but I could go into a classroom and hang out and support teachers. That's how I looked at it. I don't want to teach. I don't want to be alone with any kids. I'm a man. I was so surprised. Parents would just hand me their kids, wouldn't think twice. I don't know if they saw my heart, whatever it was, but I was really conscious of, I'm a man and there's a child. So I never was in the classroom, never in anywhere with just the child by themselves. Okay. So I'm in the classroom playing with this girl and playing with the classroom, and she just had a great time, and she was a little newer. Next day, she's coming in, she's crying, screaming at like the top of her lungs. And I'm like, what's going on? Why is she afraid? She was just... And then I'm watching her. She's like this on mommy's leg, and in this hand was the bottle of milk. And that the message to me was, that's it. And that was right around the time where we changed the foods. So how we changed the foods from milk to not milk, I ended up writing this article about not milk with the science in it. But how I did it was I used pear and spinach, and we juiced every morning. So I'd have a nice sweet juice that we would hand to the kid right from the get-go, so that they had something to look forward to. And having that and putting vegetables in a liquid form in them seemed to wake their body up to want vegetables. And I would have 2-year-olds eating steamed vegetables during lunch, and then I'd have tours of the school, and people would walk in the 2-year-old classroom, and I'd have like a table of 6 kids, 12 kids, depending on the number of teachers, and they're sitting there all at the same table, drawing, doing whatever, eating, calm. And people would say to me, what drugs do you have these kids on? And I'm like, it's the opposite. we're just feeding them right. And they're like, this is crazy. And that's how it was. These kids were calm. The teachers had an easier time with them. I've got video after video. So that's the thing that happened, is that I went back to my, little scientific friends, a scientific circle, not little. I'm not belittling. These are some of the most amazing people I ever met. So I didn't say it in a way that expresses how I feel about them. But when I went back to a talk that I did, I was invited to speak to the researchers, and I explained to them, I'm seeing asthma, eczema, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, in the kids and the parents. Fibromyalgia isn't something you see in kids typically, but in the parents, I'm seeing this stuff disappear. The same way that we're working with kids with autism, I'm seeing it in the adults. And they just said, you're too ambitious. It's probably a placebo effect. You're biased. You want to see it. And these are my friends. And I'm like, wow. I was really heartbroken. But I remember I went home and I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, well, these aren't the people I need to. They're not my target audience. My target audience is who I was, a parent that didn't know. So I decided I was just going to create videos of anyone I spoke with, so that they could see the recoveries and put the recoveries online. And at the time, the Autism Research Institute offered me a grant because they thought I was a doctor or a real researcher. And I'm like, no, I'm an independent researcher. And yeah, I did say something that got me into the physician's training. I had to come clean. And rather than, push me away, they're like, we love you and we're giving you the grant anyway, and do whatever you want with it. And you're making a lot of videos. I was making videos at the time. I filmed Ethan, and then I started filming other families' recoveries. So then they said, why don't you just keep making those recoveries? And plus, didn't you make a nasal spray, which I invented a nasal spray. So nasal sprays are a very big part of my life today.
Yes,
but back then, it was the first one, and I put a patent on it just to block it from being a medicine because it was so effective. And we got the quotes from universities and things that were just amazing. But anyway, so the Autism Research Institute gave me a $14,000 grant. So I bought a set of cameras for the school. And the way I did it, and I was getting 2-3 people every day coming in from different places in the world saying, hey, I heard what you did with your kid. Can you teach me what you know? And I never charged for 2 years straight because I didn't want to take any money, because I didn't want to capitalize. This is a gift. Everyone deserves it. Everyone deserves to know. It's the same way I don't charge for blood analysis. Everybody has a right to see their blood. That still exists today. I just make sure I give a hell of a lot more value than I ever charge for. That's how I do it today. I have to be able to do that. So I'm always making sure that everyone walks away with a life-changing experience as best as I can deliver, so that the value they can never question. Yeah. So, and it took me a long time to even get to that. But back then, I couldn't charge. So I just said, look, I'm going to film this. And if I film this and something happens that's powerful, I'm going to invite us to publish it. And it can help someone that's like you out there that doesn't know. Everyone said yes. I didn't have anyone say no. So I'd have 2 cameras sitting there as I go through the whole thing with them. And then I'd have their beginning and then their end, or generally their end sometimes, where, like 49-year-old Crystal had eczema every day of her life. Every day of her life she had eczema, she had fatigue, she had arthritis on the ankle. Changed her diet, was gone in 3 days. She came in, she's an attorney, wealthy. She could go to anybody and did. She was at studies at USC. No one could take care of it. We changed her foods. It was gone in 3 days. Did not return.
I've been an attorney 23 years. Every day is stressful because now not only do I practice law, but now I'm running a business. My mother said when I was born, I had a patch of eczema. So I've had it my entire life, and I've had it really horribly. I was always told you would outgrow it. I never did. I always had a patch of eczema somewhere, and I had it on my back when, the first time I came to you. And today I'm sitting here with no eczema anywhere on my body. None. I was at the doctor like every other day. There was just nothing for it.
So I film that because it sounds miraculous and impossible. But I turn on the camera, there's an attorney that tells the story, I publish it. And thousands of people have seen that, and thousands of people have tried the foods, and thousands of people have gotten better just from a video. So I filmed, and I still have these DV tapes from back then. In 2 years, I filmed 1,000 recoveries. 1,000 in 2 years. And they're still sitting in my garage because I will not throw them out. I could show them to you. I can send you a picture of it, and you can put it on there or something. But that was the beginning of this. And
That's 20 years ago.
This is 20 years ago. My son today is 25.
He was 3 when you started treating him.
Yeah, but prior to that was the 18 months of research.
Yeah.
Give or take, it was 16, 18 months. I don't have the exact day I started going to that conference, but I'm going to say somewhere 16 plus months. And then from there I had the school, and then it was like, I was like Forrest Gump, because I was just meeting so many amazing people. Like, I accidentally met major celebrities that, while I was in the room, they said, there's this guy publishing videos on infections and autism. I'd like to meet them. And, somebody goes, yeah, it's a dude right behind you. That's how I ended up meeting people like Jenny McCarthy and Jim Carrey and all this stuff.
Yes, I was about to ask.
Yeah.
That was going to be one of my questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Back to you. I spoke.
Well, this is great. I mean, it's phenomenal what you've been doing. Really quite phenomenal.
Yeah. It's all about love, to be honest.
Really?
It's all about love. I wouldn't have done this for me, and there's very few people I would have thrown my life away for. My son, the love of my son, absolutely was that. I wanted a child so bad most of my life, and I felt like I lost the ability to be able to play with him, or to have a child that had some sort of impactful life. And in a way, I was codependently approaching it, which is I really took it personal. But that was fine. That's the fuel I needed to do to put everything into it. So I did it absolutely for love, and that's why I still do it. But yeah, it came from love. Back to you. Sorry.
I've got so many comments. So what you said at the beginning about everyone who works in holistic health comes with their own story of healing something or supporting someone else.
Yes.
I've said the same thing on just about every one of my podcasts, and so I just love that you said that. And another thing I was going to say was related to autism. Was it's quite a triggering subject.
Oh yeah.
Currently, because of the
and
narrative.
20 years ago.
And 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Because of the narrative that's been put out there in the mainstream media and via our governments, etc. There's the idea that we could heal a brain, a broken brain, a damaged brain, goes against what we've been told about this subject. So the very notion that you can say that your son recovered, healed from autism, which is supposedly a
permanent condition, not reversible.
Exactly, it's a different brain.
Yeah.
That alone can trigger a lot of things. In fact, even this morning, I was having a message with a friend of mine who's mid-50s, and he's only recently been diagnosed to be on the spectrum or autism.
Many of us are, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. And what I do want to add in is that there's a lot of different versions of autism. It's one of those words, it's a huge umbrella. So you can look at autism as being a superpower. There's lots of people that embrace it, and I embrace my own when I dive in and can do magical things. There is that type of autism. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a biological condition that is holding someone back. It is under this umbrella of autism. But I don't want anyone out there that embraces it as an identity and a power to feel like I'm speaking like you need to reverse that. I was looking to make my child as healthy as possible so that his opportunities in life could be expansive and unlimited. So that's what I'm talking about. I apologize because I want to make that point.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point to make. Sometimes labels can do us a disservice. If we were to look at some kids who aren't able to function as other kids are, that to me says, and then there's like a statistical
support
of this. Yeah. Then we need to look into it.
It's a limiting behavior. It's a limiting thought. And it may be true, but how do you know until you try?
Yeah. And shouldn't we be exploring every avenue just to at least rule it out?
Absolutely.
That there's environmental factors.
Absolutely.
So it's
science showed these kids were sick. It's interesting because it's still debated. Like I went to an autism conference recently, and it's like 20 years later, and I'm seeing a lot of the same behaviors, a lot of the same sort of protocols, and a lot of the same trauma. And but the truth is, if anyone went through the trouble, and I could show you in the medical literature, it will say a child that lives closer to a farm that has organophosphate and organochlorine pesticides, the closer they are, and the tonnage that's being used, they'll have up to 6 times more autism.
My goodness.
So there's 2 studies that support that. 2 different places have found that. Then you can also find up to 6 or 7 times more autism the closer you live to mercury in industry.
Right.
Okay. So there's that. So the way I look at it is like people say, oh well, if you're saying autism is reversible, you're saying it has to be vaccines, and I'm saying no. What happened to my son? He was born with eczema. What I have found.
He actually was born with eczema.
That day he had eczema on him.
Vaccine.
First day, yes, absolutely. So to me, that infection, which I've learned to be in many cases, is fungal or fungal-like, or an infection, we'll say, because I try not to use words even for a descriptive factor. It's like, I see interference in the plasma. I see cells that seem irregular. I see these things that look like entities in the blood that don't seem like they need to be there. That's generally how I look at things. And here's the interesting thing. I'll give it to you now. There's only like 7 things out of all conditions that I ever see in here that we're researching on. There's only 7 things that are the actual problem.
Reminds me of Dr. Buttar's 7 toxicities.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't necessarily know that.
You know him.
I did. Yes. Yeah. Well, he passed with under quite interesting circumstances. So, in the scientific literature, it shows that you can have a viral infection. There was 2 people that would get a herpes virus as an adult, have autism symptoms, get treated for the herpes virus, and pull out of autism. There are 2 studies that showed recoveries from then, even then when it was unheard of. And I'm like, well, if that person that fell into this autism category based on their symptomatology, and you could pull a virus out of them, if you believe in them, there's a whole thing around that. But if, let's just say, cells that were affected caused it, and you take care of the cells and they get better, then why can't other kids potentially at least try that you could do the same thing? So that was the first glimmer of, there's some recoveries. So that's in the medical literature. And GI distress, nutritional deficiencies. Jacqueline McCandless is a physician that had a granddaughter with autism, wrote a book called Children with Starving Brains, because she did metabolite tests for brain chemistry, and they were all low in her granddaughter. So she and some of my work from back then is actually in her book. She's since passed, but wonderful woman. But the point is that she found nutritional deficiencies. So we saw nutritional deficiencies, infections, toxins, immune dysregulation. All these things were in this bucket. And autism, of course, is a big bucket. Each kid has their own signature pattern, and obviously it's a spectrum. So to me, the way I look at it is forget the word autism. Try to figure out what the outlying conditions or symptomatology or conditions or biological issues that are going on in that individual that has a right to life and to have a full life, and then figure out how you can potentially help those along and help balance a body. That's basically what we do in all the research that we're actually doing for any human that comes in here. Beautiful. Is that we're looking for those outlying things, trying to figure out ways to work on them, and then watching what happens when the body recovers. We barely do anything. We're basically supporting a person and then watching them elevate.
I love that. I think it's good to move away from labels, isn't it?
100%.
Even, we could look at the screen now and we could label, there's a live blood analysis. In fact, let's just direct the screen. So if we go over here, we have Stan's live blood analysis screen. And this is with Stan the entire time. And on the left, you've got the blood. Well, do you want to explain it?
Yeah. So we have a system. It's a very rich system that has a lot of AI inside of it, but it tracks everything from the chief complaints that somebody will come in with that they're trying to research. And then it tracks every picture that we end up taking as far as the blood. Like this is an 11-year-old boy that formerly had cancer, not that it's a good word to say, but and he had 12 rounds chemo, 11 rounds radiation, and was in mom's eyes something was wrong, even though everyone was saying he was fine. And then this was his blood on the way in. And this is inflammation. The cells are together. They're irregularly shaped. And then we find these sort of entities in here. And the unique thing about the microscope that we have done is that we've trained the microscope to look for energy and to display that on the screen as color and brightness. So this is a unique thing. There's typical microscopes and live blood analysis or dark field microscopes. This is a base of that with extra sensors that can see energy. Now, this piece, if when I went through training on my scopetry, they say this thing, it didn't look like this. It just looked like the shape. They'll say that this is either an anomaly, which is a very interesting word, or cholesterol. And that's what they say this is. But when you start to see this as energy, you can see that it is brighter than most things ever in the blood. And it has these dots in there. When you look at those dots closely, these are stem cells. These are stem cells attached to something in the body that's not supposed to be there. And then once you start to use certain methodologies on this, they will disappear. And those stem cells seem to reappear in the blood. And you have more stem cells. And all these people are getting stem cell treatments, for example. I have always felt a weird thing about getting somebody else's stem cells in you. That's never felt right for me. But what I found was you can trigger stem cells in a body. It doesn't matter how old they are. You can trigger that, especially when you start eliminating these things from the blood. So this was August 8th. Today is what? September 8th. This was just a month ago. So this is August 8th at 12 o'clock, and this is August 12th, just 3.5 days later, basically, at 1:03. All the cells look fantastic. There aren't these entities, anomalies, cholesterols, whatever you want to call them. And again, I don't care. I really don't like using names because most of them, to me, I believe are completely wrong and designed to keep people off track. But those things are gone in the blood, and what you have is just beautiful red blood cells. And he was completely, as his mom said, completely different. The testimonial video she left, she's basically crying, and she's saying, I really feel like that this saved my son's life.
Today we brought, or the last few days we've been here with my son. And it's okay, Mom. I'm just so happy that he's better now because, like, he had cancer when he was little, and we went through chemotherapy and radiation, so he's had so much done to his body already. I found this place very unexpectedly, but I'm so thankful that I did because I feel like it saved my son's life. We are leaving, and his blood is 100, and it's a million times better than what it was when we walked in here, as I suspected. Now leaving, the energy level, the dark circles under his eyes are dissipating. The way he talks, I trust Stan with my child's life. I think that says a lot.
And that's usually the kind of feeling that people end up having, especially that. So the system tracks all that. It's there forever. You can see in the background, every picture we took is there. His picture pre and post are in there. The conditions, how they started, like his symptomatology, and the changes are all in there. So we track all that. I also have a research AI, which this is kind of cool. And I don't know, I'm excited about it. I don't know if it lands with everybody, but basically back in the day, what I ended up doing is I went into medical literature and did all that work and consumed that data. Today, we built an AI that thinks like I do. And you can put any condition into it, and it'll go through the medical literature and look for the safest natural remedies and root causes for a condition. So if you have a condition of eczema, you'll actually see that the medical literature does point to funguses, does point to parasites, but you won't hear that because that's just suppressed. But in the medical science, the NIH database, PubMed, peer-reviewed, proper journals, and it might be a smaller journal, it might be in France, but all that is in this database. What I had learned, I programmed into the AI. So in 60 seconds, I basically can take a condition. It'll show me the root causes based on science, and then it'll take a look at remedy verticals, and it'll look at indigenous. It'll look at mom's remedies. It'll look at, and then it shows you all of it with links to the science, so you can dive in and read more if you're that type of person. Or if you want to go and buy it, if it says berberine, for example, and you want to check it out, you click a button, it'll take you to the Amazon website, or it'll take you to Google, Google purchasing, whatever they could, Google shopping, and you can just buy it right there. It gives you one sheet of that, and people that are here, they can ask me something like that. I may not know anything about it. I type it in, get that data, and email it to them, and they have that data right away. So you can do it anytime.
And that's pretty new.
Yeah.
That's new in the last few months.
Yeah. What I do in my free time is I sit here and program, and that was one of my first loves was doing programming, and it's back. It's back. So now with AI tools, I'm 20 times faster than I've ever been. So I'm really passionate about making these things, and I get to do that in my free time.
Free time, yes. Yeah. I can relate, by the way. I've been using AI, not to this degree, but it's been...
We were talking about that for trauma.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I've got a trauma app too, because you can ask me about trauma, but the connection between the cells and trauma are direct. And we've demonstrated that in the microscope, is that somebody in trauma will have a certain look in their cells. Their cells will look very much like similar to what we see in cancer. And as soon as they work through the trauma, you check their blood again. And I'm not talking minutes or hours. You can just literally go, okay, good, you're boom. And you can see the cells greatly improved. And if they start trauma-ing about the past and start storytelling in their mind, and you feel that change, you literally check their blood, it's completely different. It is exact.
That's insane.
It is exact. So it's as you do it, it changes immediately. And what I see is going on in the body, my imagination to it, my belief around it is the cells are trying to figure out, if you're in fight or flight, they're going to hold together and block the circulation in case you get an arm ripped off by a tiger. Right. And it doesn't know any different between the tiger or your mother's an alcoholic or your father yelled at you. And every time we're in those stories and we don't see that those things help create our gifts, the cells, we hurt ourselves. And we're more susceptible to things like viruses and however you want to look at it. But I was thinking of COVID. And when COVID started, and for us, we were going to take an alternative approach to what the public was doing. Yeah. I knew that if something happened, I need to be able to protect my child. So I learned how to work on people with COVID, with active COVID, based on science that was available in the medical literature, not in the COVID research, but in the coronavirus research in veterinary medicine.
Interesting.
Because coronavirus was in animals. So in the veterinary science, you could find, coronavirus 18, coronavirus 17, coronavirus 16, and there was a pattern of recoveries from biomagnetics, just magnets. So yes. I learned through Dr. Goyce in Mexico was the inventor, and he was taken up by NASA, and he was treating astronauts that would come back with weird symptoms. He'd treat them with magnets. They'd never even have to know what the condition was. So he was using magnets for that. So I found the translator for Goyce, because he didn't speak English, in Northern California, and I went to her and I paid her to train me, and that's how I was confident during COVID how to take care of my son and my family. So that science was in there, and you could find that science in the AI engine. Like biomagnetics is amazing, but today we've got better things. But it takes 2.5 hours with magnets, but now we can do it in like 45 minutes.
Carrie Kasem, who I had on my podcast, who will be coming here, she's a TV personality. She reversed Lyme with biomagnetics.
Yes.
So
that's one of 125 things that you test for. There's 125 things that you're testing for and muscle testing for and can treat with biomagnetics. And maybe more now, but it was 125 is what I was trained in.
Talking of Lyme, I didn't say this at the beginning, and I might chop this into the beginning.
Yeah.
We discovered shortly after the Conscious Life Expo that I had Lyme all over my blood. And I was pretty shocked because I didn't have any major symptoms.
Right.
I've always looked after my health for the most part.
Yeah.
And nothing major except for joint stuff.
Right.
So when you found it, and it wasn't just on one or two cells, it was all over it. Mm-hmm. You suggested I came and saw you in your facility for a few days. And the skeptical mind goes, "Oh, really? Same guy who's tested my blood wants me to go back and see." So,
It's not the first time that I imagine somebody thinks that. Yeah.
But I went with my intuition, and something felt really good about seeing you present, and I saw with my own eyes what was going on in my blood.
Yeah.
And I'd seen you talk for an hour about all these people who supported.
Right.
So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go with my intuition, and I went to go and see you. And over the course of 3 days, we did a series of treatments on top of each other. And layered. And I see some of these, most of these aren't brand new. It's how they're used in conjunction with each other.
Correct.
The synergistic effect.
The order of things is
and
really
the order.
important, and why you're doing it based on the blood and how you're measuring it, and how much and how often and things like that.
Yeah.
All of that is the trick. And a lot of the things here are made from scratch. The way we do hydrogen, the way we do certain things here is made from scratch. Lasers we made from scratch. So the frequencies, the powers, the reason we're using them, all that stuff is that I get to use my inventor side to me. And then the nasal sprays. So
I was going to say,
I have a lot of fun.
You do. I can see how passionate you are about it.
Yes, sir.
You've got the talking of inventions, you've got the nasal spray, you've got the antiparasitic drinks, you've got the antibacterial.
You're right.
I mean, most of it's nature, right?
Yeah.
And it's just remarkable. I mean, I'll share, I was doing a nebulizer earlier with garlic.
Yeah.
And
that thing's a home run, and it's just as simple as garlic.
It actually made me feel a bit sick, so I stopped it for a bit.
Yeah.
We looked at the blood beforehand, and then looked afterwards, and it had quite a profound effect.
Yeah.
Just the garlic. I mean, there were, I guess, a few other things we did, but that week I could
really
tell.
Good for people with eczema, by the way, which you said you had before. So there's probably a connection there. And you said it hurt your tongue. People have aches in their tongues usually when they have fungus and bacteria that is all through their GI tract, because that stuff is 23 feet long. If it hurts your tongue, it's usually working in here too. That's my experience with it. So and it's powerful. Just and that is like for people with psoriasis and eczema and H. pylori, things like that. It can be an absolute home run. So simple things like that. I love simple. To me, I always say if it's not simple, it's not true.
I quoted you saying that on one of my
love
podcasts.
that.
Yeah. So by the way, the eczema that I had, I wasn't born with it. It was post injection.
Yeah,
which is like. In fact, it happened with my nieces.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I think that's around the time I started.
It's on the safety information sheet that it's a potential side effect of it. It's not a surprise if you're actually looking.
It also isn't a surprise, given that a lot of the vaccines will trigger systemic inflammation.
Sure.
Because they wouldn't work if they didn't.
Yeah, they're upregulating your immune system, and they're in their best form. They're upregulating the immune system and targeting. I'm not a vaccine expert. I have no position that I'm going to speak of around vaccines, but it even in the medical in the inserts in the VIS, the vaccine information safety sheets, it literally says that eczema is a potential side effect of vaccines. Yeah.
The way I see it, again, without being a vaccine.
By the way, also sexually transmittable, because a lot of times they think a lot of times you'll hear things like, oh, it's genetic, and that never rang true for me when you think about it. Because
which one?
Anything.
Almost
anything. I'm saying eczema is sexually transmitted.
I wasn't having sex when I was 3 years old.
No, but it's possible your parents were.
Right.
So your father could have it in his family, transmit it to mom, and mom sends it to you.
Wow.
So when I say sexual transmission, no, you probably weren't having sex at 3, but that's how. So a lot of times they'll say, well, it's in the family, it must be genetic. And it can look like that if it's an infection. And the reason you can easily determine the difference, like how come autism, they used to say, was genetic. We don't know what it is. We know it's not reversible. We think it might be genetic. That was the phrases that they would use. Well, if you look in the medical literature, the fastest growing genetic condition, the fastest incidence, is 1% increase per 100 years. And if you were looking at autism, which was 1 in 10,000 in the 1980s, and now is 1 in 12.5 boys in California. And if you can say, oh, well, it's better diagnosis. Well, when you hear these things, what I say to people is we've lost discernment. When you hear a story, if you just believe the story and you don't sit there and go, how can I validate that myself? That is our biggest problem. We give our thinking away to other people and hope that they are doing the right thing. No one has the care for my son that his mom and I would have. So putting him in the hands of other people for decision making exclusively is a tremendous mistake. And no one's going to care more about me than myself once I'm clear of my own trauma. So it's important to have that. So when I was looking at autism, for example, and somebody said, well, it's a better diagnosis. This is a common thing they say. There's more diagnosed kids now than there was back then because we've had better criteria. We've taught developmental pediatrics. Well, here's the thing. Logic and common sense, and if I was to write a book, it's going to be like the lost art of common sense, because I really feel like everything I do comes from that place. Yeah. Truth and common sense, those are the two things that I feel are my connection to how I relate to God. So if autism is better diagnosis, all you need to do, and 20 years ago at the time, now it's 30 years ago, that you're saying that there is the same number of kids with autism. All you need to do is go to a school teacher that has been in the preschool kindergarten for 30 years and say, have you seen an increase of those symptoms, regardless of what do you call it? Right. And they'll say, well, 30 years ago, if we had one come to the school in 3 or 4 years, we'd all get together and look because it was that uncommon. Today, it's how many in each classroom. So you don't need to diagnose it to know that it is more than 1% per 100 years. Cannot be fully genetic. Has to have some other, and the next thing is they'll say, well, it's an environmental issue. The environment's worse than it was before. Yes, you can say that, but then everything would be that way because the environment would affect everything. Why specifically certain conditions, and especially if you look in the medical literature and see that infections are involved, and those infections, fungus, bacteria, virus, all these things are actually very sexually transmittable. Lyme is sexually transmittable.
Yes, you told me
it's
that.
in the medical literature. So you can find it in studies and you go, forget that. Because if I hear someone tell me, oh, well, it's genetic, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go check before I believe you. And then when I see it's not true, then I know you're either ignorant, kindly, or you're lying to me, in which case I have to determine the truth of that. And this type of navigation is what it took for me to really understand truth for me and my child, and I feel like that is what's missing.
Yeah.
This is why we're having all these debates about, whether it's Kennedy or, and it's all like this religious type thinking where they want to believe, but they're not willing to sit down and actually look at the evidence, look at the studies. There's studies that go back to 2000 that talk about stuff that is related to this. The Restratton study, I don't want to get into it. There's so much evidence when you start looking, you can make your own decisions, and that's one of the reasons why I made that AI, is that I don't want you to have to go through the pain that I went through for 18 months. I can take a condition and learn about it in 2 minutes. And get an idea. Anyway, back to you.
Just a point I was going to make about genetic diseases.
Yes.
We have the science of epigenetics now.
It
tells us that it's the environment in the body that signals the genes.
Yeah.
It's not the genes themselves that trigger the illness.
Yeah.
And that's around 98% of the population.
Yes.
And about 2% are born with defective genes.
Right.
They might put autism in that category if they choose.
There's no epidemic of Down syndrome, for example.
Right.
It's pretty much the same number of kids, and we're all the autistic adults. There's no such thing, but 1 in 12 and a half boys. You can figure this out if you use logic, but it also means drop everything that you're doing and just ask simple questions to get simple answers.
Talking of simplicity, the same person I was talking to earlier about mercury, the way I see it is if kids are injected with mercury and aluminium and lead, it's not a stretch to understand how that goes through the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
Mercury
100%.
is a neurotoxin, second after plutonium.
Correct.
So why is it such a stretch to say that it can cause brain damage? And we could label that autism.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a stretch.
It's not a stretch at all. And if what they were putting in kids dropped on the floor and went across this floor, you'd have to have a hazmat, to come in and take it out. With the dental amalgam fillings, yes, it's safe to put in, but when you take it out, if you're a dentist and you put that in water, one amalgam filling can pollute 250,000 gallons of water beyond the EPA standards of mercury. Goodness. So that's one. And
you get fragments that go down the throat, even if they use all the damming and the ozone and everything else.
Yeah, it's a big mess. And when you start to see this, you go, if we're asleep, if we decide not to take this into our own personal hands and use our common sense and use our intuition and get grounded in truth, we're going to be taken advantage of. And there's a lot of reasons that it's happening, and there's a lot of things we can speculate going on. But basically, the ones that are not wanting to think about it are the ones that are going to be the most taken advantage of. And our energy is very valuable. There's something out there that is wanting to make sure that we're smaller than we're supposed to be. And I feel like I'm in the business of finding out what humanity is capable of when they're at their full potential. That's really that's if you want to know my biggest curiosity, and that is I want to know what a real human looks like, because none of us have seen one.
I love that so much, because that's ultimately what I have found myself experiencing working in holistic health for 10 years. Uh-huh. When people go down the holistic health path, when they detoxify the bodies, they get all rid of the sludge, all the crap, all the metals, the parasites. It's like the pineal gland opens up, and you start to understand the world of energy and these psychic gifts and clairvoyance and remote viewing and all these wonderful things. I was talking to someone earlier who I mentioned. She had a root canal out, and she can now hear electricity wherever there's Wi-Fi or electricity pylons, is like in the mind. Yeah. And she went on to tell me that she's so clean. She's a psychic medium and various other things. She can see. She's a seer.
Yeah.
And we kind of said to each other, we're saying the same thing. The more we detoxify and get all this stuff out of the body, it's like it opens up our
100%.
Consciousness.
Yeah.
And we start to evolve and elevate, and we start to discover this superhuman potential we have. So it's like, let's get all this stuff out. Let's measure it under the microscope.
Yeah.
See it happen before our very eyes. That's what I loved about being here. I could see it. Like, I would see my blood, and I go on the Rife machine.
Yeah.
See my blood 30 minutes later, go, crikey.
Yeah.
And then we'd go and do hyperbaric oxygen, and similar thing. We'd monitor it each day, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
So I think you've obviously touched a lot of subjects here. And you've talked about 7 major reasons why we display certain symptomology.
I see 7 things in the blood, and what I used to do, and like, for example, in the Rife machine, I spent a lot of time researching every frequency that was in science and what it potentially treats. And I've got a database of these really long, huge number of conditions, all these names, like maybe several thousand, and numerous frequencies for everything. What I've learned over experimentation over time is there's basically about 7 things that anyone that comes in, whether it was the 11-year-old boy with cancer or the 76-year-old that had Alzheimer's or the 80-year-old that had dementia, their blood ultimately doesn't look all that different. There are nuances, but you basically have cells that are sick, plasma that's full of stuff. You've got entities that are potentially involved that are stealing stem cells, missing stem cells, and that's almost it. Like, I can almost get it down to like 4. And what we do, everything here is a layered way, because the body, what I learned over time is, like, the body doesn't want to detoxify in the face of an infection. The infection has a greater priority. So if you have bacteria and fungus and these entities in you, to take out heavy metals is a really bad idea, because the body doesn't want to. I've proven that.
Interesting.
Yeah, through experiments with mercury and infections. I did that on myself, injecting myself.
Damn.
But I found that data, so I'm always looking at, okay, well, how do we get your brain regulated, which we have nasal sprays for, and we've shown that in EEG studies, and that's on the front wall.
I saw that.
So we know how to regulate the brain. When that's calm, and you're just, people go from a stress level of like a 12 because they lost their house in the Palisades fires. We spray them 60 seconds later. They say, wow, I feel totally fine.
Interesting.
So here we are at the event to take care of people that have been affected by the fires. Right? What's your name? Gabby. So Gabby, 2 minutes ago, what was your stress level?
12.
12. And what is your stress level now?
-10. Yes, I've been evacuated for 10 days.
Wow.
And I hadn't felt this sense of peace until now. Yeah, thank you.
And we sprayed you literally how long ago?
A minute ago.
A minute ago. So we sprayed her a minute ago, and now she has a sense of peace, even after everything that happened.
Yes.
Yeah. If you would have seen her before, you'd be just like, hey, it's my turn, right? Yeah. And now she's like, look at this.
Glowing.
Yeah, amazing. Great work.
You want the person's brain to be regulated. You want the body to not be attacking infections, that it's calm. Once you get to that state, then metals, pesticides, plastics, those types of things you can work on. And all in all, what you're doing is you're regulating the body. And then from that, almost all things seem to disappear. And that's a very ambitious statement. That was almost like saying, hey, it's not just kids with autism. Now I'm like, it's like 7 things. That's why I don't want to say the words of like, like, to me, like, if you want to talk about cancer, I think the body creates it. I think that a lot of times you have an infection that's hitting a certain organ, and the body wants to encapsulate it like you would a nuclear incident. You'd want to put cement on there that's permanent. So I think the body creates these cells that don't die for a reason. So it's like you think about what's on the inside of that thing, and you want to kill that in the rest of the body. You can generally see abnormalities in the blood that you could imagine might be involved. So you want to take care of that stuff before you start turning anaerobic cells into aerobic cells so that they can die off, which the science shows that you actually can do that with frequencies and light and energy. And that's been our experience.
And detoxification.
Yeah,
I could talk to you for hours on cancer because it's like that's a subject that I've taken a deep dive in.
Yeah.
I think if we could just flip our perception of what it is, just changing the meaning, like if we understand it as something different, like it's the body's own protective mechanism, a survival mechanism. It's actually trying to protect us and give us a warning light. There's countless
spiritually
people,
as well, and emotionally as well. We can talk trauma
physical,
all day long
mental,
too.
Emotional, energetic. I talk about
now I go bacteria, fungus, virus, parasites, emotional healing, and spiritual release. I've got 6 things, and we've got Amazonian roots that match that. And
they're pretty fun.
Yes, they are.
Yes. Almost psychedelic, but not. It was. They cleanse like every cell in your body.
Zero drugs here, zero psychedelics here. This is all natural things. But yes, it's very powerful, and we do have people that have these awakenings. And here's the interesting thing. I was mentioning about the magnets and COVID. What happened during COVID when I was using magnets to work on people, I had this thing happen. And I didn't ask for it, but my first person that I worked on was my pool guy. As soon as I returned back from Northern California, my pool guy said, I can't do your pool, I got to go to the hospital. Young man, striking, like perfect sort of Latin pool man kind of thing. And he said, I can't come to your house because I've got COVID so bad. I'm going to the hospital. And I said, well, I just learned this thing. Do you want to try it? And I had to drive to him. He couldn't drive 10 miles. I put a little pulse ox on his finger from Amazon for $12, and he was in the 80s. He was right to want to go to the hospital, but I said, hey, let me just do this thing. As I'm doing the magnets on him, for the very first time, it took me 3 hours, I think, to complete. I'm looking at the sheet, and I'm doing this, and I'm feeling the foot and all this stuff. It sounds hocus pocus, I'm telling you, but it worked. When I was done, actually when I was like 3/4 of the way through, he started talking about a trauma. I didn't ask for it. And he's a quiet guy. He starts talking about this trauma. And as he talked it out, and I reflected to him and acknowledged him, and also introduced the idea of what gifts did it bring you? How did it change your life in a way that it wouldn't have if it didn't exist? That's usually where I go in trauma work. It's like connecting my mother's death to, I wouldn't be sitting here with you doing this work without my son having autism exactly when he did, because I had to meet Elaine Gosh in 2004 because she died in 2005. She helped me learn the science of food. I would have missed her if my wish would have been, please, Mom, I want her to live 1 more year. If God would have said yes, I would have never met Elaine. My son wouldn't be the same, and I wouldn't have the same food knowledge that I have now. So once you see that, the trauma is over because what you believed was true wasn't, and that's the only way you can legitimately do it. It's not that, this happened and I'm better and I'm stronger. Yes, but no, it had to happen that way. And I don't endorse the cancer that took my mother, but I acknowledge that was the pawn that the universe used to take her, and it needed to happen in order for me to be activated. The biggest engines require the biggest starters. A prophet's soul is especially afflicted because it has to become so large. That's Rumi. Beautiful. It's the same type of thing. So anyway.
I love this. It's
trauma.
Touching on the soul contract.
One after the other. Sorry, I'm going to go back to soul contract. I'll hold that for you for a second. Every time I was working on somebody with COVID, a trauma came up. It was over and over again. First, I thought it was a one-time thing. Then it was 2. Then it was 3. And I'm like, I'm seeing a pattern. Is it like, this is nuts? There was a trauma that either happened in the beginning of COVID, or it was a chronic trauma from a childhood that seemed to set them up. And that's when I was like, I think if everyone worked on this trauma closet, making connections to acknowledging their gifts and gratitude, and the cells are going to, as I learned, straighten out. I think that's the whole thing.
Yeah,
I think it's the whole thing. It's like if you want the best vaccination, it is to take care of your trauma and to be at one with everything that happens. And I know that's sort of overused, but that's what I see in the blood, and that's what I saw happen every time.
That's interesting. You see it in the blood.
I see it in the blood. I can tell you stories about it. But what I've learned, at first I used to do it, as you know, I used to do it ad hoc. Now part of like we do a lot of things in 3.5 days. I used to try to do everything in one day, including working through people's trauma ad hoc. And I was not great all the time. And so today, that's why I spread people out across time. And we do trauma work as part of every day. I mean, you might be working on something in detox, and then we're doing a piece of trauma work. And now I've got an app for it as well. So that whole trauma worksheet is in an app.
You showed me that.
Yeah. And so that I think is such an integral part, because every time it seems that we start healing the body, we'll see people just, the one today is just like, I don't know why I just took that spray and I feel like crying. I'm like, I understand why. Your brain's regulating, and it can go back and do the backlog of trauma. And this stuff, I mean, I've had big men, at conferences get a little conference spray, and I'm head to head with them and they're crying. Like military guys just crying because their brain regulates and this stuff starts to come out. The trauma work, the work in the blood, the bacteria, fungus, virus, parasites, emotional release, spiritual healing. I believe that is potentially the whole ball of wax.
Oof, yeah. Do you know one of my favorite quotes? The organs weep the tears the eyes refuse to shed.
Yes.
I mean,
there's studies on this, by the way.
Yeah,
there's studies on this. Yeah. Like in Byron Katie's work, which is Loving What Is and Questioning Your Thinking, she had a study done. I think Stanford was involved with it. And what they did is they took. Oh no! This was the one in Israel. There was an Israeli study that was done at a university hospital in Israel, the largest hospital in Israel, where they took terminally ill cancer patients and they questioned their thoughts about stress. And the ones that questioned their thoughts compared to the controls, which did not, live longer.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's I mean, that's just one study, but there's science. It was Shahar Levary's work in Israel. Yeah.
I started to understand the impacts of trauma when I discovered Dr. Bradley Nelson, who wrote The Emotion Code. Mm-hmm. And I tied that into principles of the body electric, who I learned from Dr. Jerry Tennant. And I realized that emotions are stored as electromagnetic bundles of energy, which basically drop the voltage in our cells, in our organs.
Yes.
So if we can get that
it's
out.
It's so true. I know.
And you've seen it on the
You see
slide.
it. Yeah. I had someone, a very good friend of mine that I knew from 25 years ago in New York. He lives here. And he came, and he's a very prideful guy. And I never expected him to even show up. But one day he showed up. When I saw his cells on the screen, they barely had white lines. It was all gray and most like half invisible. I'd never seen cells so uncharged in a human. It almost looked like if I would have saw it and somebody said, this is a dead person's blood, I would have been like, oh, it makes sense because it looks so different. He came in like that. He was a shell of himself when he walked in. And he had all sorts of stuff that happened to him. People betrayed him, people that he had loved really, really hurt him. And he just was devastated. And when we worked on him and he got his energy back and his brain was active and his cells came online and he got his trauma out, it was like 24 hours and his blood looked amazing. And somebody like that, I think, there's how many people out there are like that end up dying, that end up killing themselves, that end up doing something terrible to a family member, or, I've been in relationships where I hurt people because of my trauma. I'm very acutely aware of how long I had my mom trauma, where I was looking for my mom in all these relationships, and I was reacting when I wasn't getting my mom. And, if that's one example, how much of us is going around hurting other fellow human beings, other brothers and sisters, because we haven't processed this trauma. And some of it is because, and it could be chicken or egg, but if our brains are dysregulated, we move to fight or flight much faster than we look at reflection and accountability. I mean, these are things that are very hard to see today. You don't see a lot of accountability. You don't see a lot of curiosity. You don't see a lot of problem solving. Those things are the basis of us growing, and instead we go, I don't like you, you bothered me, you reminded me of somebody.
The science is settled.
Yeah, the science is settled by someone I don't know, and I have no idea what their motives are, but it's settled.
Yeah. Stan, we've covered a lot. I just want to say, we could talk for another hour, 2, 3.
Yeah.
We have done over many, many days.
You get to come back.
Yes.
You can come back, or, we'll see.
I just want to say, going back to the autism thing, just quickly, I just have one question.
One more thing. We'll finish it up, I promise.
What would you say to any parent who is curious, open-minded, seeking answers for their child?
I would I would say I remember the diagnosis. I remember what my doctor said to me. My developmental pediatrician said to me that this is likely to be very hard and expect to live a really hard life. I know these parents are, I know what it's like to feel dysregulated. I know what it's like to feel scared. I know what it's like to want to do everything you can for your child and to not have anyone give you answers and to just have to live your life. I would just say this, is that some of these kids, if not many, are not well, and the average doctor does not know how to do it. You can't look at a doctor and say that a doctor should know everything, especially about what's considered fringe to them and what they're told can't be treatable. But there are doctors out there, there are researchers out there, there are parents out there that have successfully pulled their kids out of the biological condition that was causing the symptoms. If you want, I would say go and find these people. And, and as soon as possible, early is better because the brain is more plastic early on. I've seen the best recoveries happen early, but even older kids can do well. Like I had a 16-year-old that came in here and I could show you his blood. It was some of the worst blood I'd ever seen. And 4 hours later, the blood was almost entirely clear and he was regulated. And there's a video on our YouTube channel that said, and I wasn't even going to ask him to speak. His mom was just talking about her neck issue where she couldn't move her neck and all of a sudden she could do this and drive again.
So tell me about your neck.
So my neck was hurting for 2 years. I can hardly drive and it's gone. It's just gone. It's just I can move my head and it's amazing. The pain is gone.
You know, somebody watching this would be like, how can 2 years of pain disappear like that?
I know. It sounds too good to be true, but it is true and I'm like, very grateful. Amazing.
Not now. Do you want to be? You want to say anything?
You want to say anything?
You can. You don't have to.
No.
Not without your permission.
Okay.
All right. So, what was it like for you?
I felt like this process was, it was good, but I got kind of tired with all the sprays and everything. I didn't know what to expect, but Stan really healed me and made me feel better with myself. And he's like a true hero. That's all I gotta say.
And then when his blood cleared, he literally was just like somebody else. And we see that a lot. The people, that's why I take pictures in the beginning. How they looked when they got here and how they look when they leave is completely different. And that happened to him, and his mom basically said it was like his bar mitzvah. 16 and became a man that day. So that's a 16-year-old. All of us, at any age, just about anyone I've ever checked, has unclear blood in some way and would benefit from being clear. We all deserve it. We all deserve to live our best lives. And I think intuitively inside, I knew that I wasn't who I was supposed to be. I think most people are walking around like that. I would say, if you can get your child in front of somebody that can take a look at a drop of blood, that has. For me, I always use the rule of extremes. If I'm chasing after something, find someone who has done it and done it with something worse than your child, and go to that. That's a place to look, not from a neighbor that says, "Hey, you should try this." And what experience do they have? What is their experience base? Weigh the information, ask good questions, set an intention. I said to myself, I only want a perfect recovery, like the best possible recovery for my son. If someone was going to talk to me about anything else, I was not interested in talking to them. If they didn't recover their child or get close, I wasn't interested in listening. I weighed that day. Like I would listen. I said, "Thank you. How's your kid?" And they'd say, "Oh, he's not so good." "Okay, great, thanks." And I'd have that in my head as, okay, that's not a direction I'm going to go in. But if someone has done it at anywhere, find those people, seek them out, learn what they know, try, like one thing at a time, try for your child, because there's so many things that you're not being told today. There's so many reasons that you're unfortunately, you and your family are being capitalized on, in my view. And go for that recovery if you really want it. Go for the thing that you want, and then logically go after people that have done it, experienced it, and dive in potentially. If you need coaching, find a coach, find a coach if you need coaching, find somebody with experience. This stuff's valuable. Save your own time. That's why going to a coach is so important. So that's some of the things I would say. But if you want it, I would say nothing is impossible. Humans are amazing. Children are amazing.
Love that.
Things happen here that are literally like miracle level stuff. I don't want to call them miracles, but it's miracle level stuff that I have the privilege to see every single day in humans and their spirit and their connection that happens and how they light up. So there's a lot available. Don't be sad. Don't grieve. These things do not create energy. They do not create productivity. Set an intention. Put everything aside that you want to, invest a certain amount of time, put things aside and go for it and measure and see what happens. And if you see a glimmer like I did, we started doing foods and within 2 weeks his language doubled. That to me is like the biggest green light from the universe. Keep leaning into it, press on the gas pedal. But I would start disbelieve anything that's limiting and think about what you want, go and find and dig in. How's that?
I think that couldn't have said it better myself. That was quite extraordinary. I think you were channeling with that.
Yeah, I think so too.
My second to last question was going to be, what would you say to someone with a chronic illness or an incurable illness? And I guess the answer is the same.
Calm. I would say a lot of that is calm. Like if someone wants to understand what we do here and is not well, most cases I don't know why people are coming. My assistant doesn't even tell me. I'm not terribly interested unless it requires logistics, like we have somebody coming in a wheelchair or something like that. But, this is a private membership. This is a research organization. I'm willing to put my mind towards whatever comes through the door. I would say go for it. Look and consider trying it. Or at least take a look at the data that let's say we have or somebody has or Neil or whatever way you want to go. But most things, strangely enough, in my view, have simple solutions. They have a root cause. There's a simple solution if you forget all the names and everything you've been told and open your mind and give the universe a chance to actually show you signs. There's so much magic available and so many possible miracles, and I'm privileged enough to have I'm privileged enough to have a place where I get to see it every day, and it's not like I sleep a lot, as you can probably tell. Yeah, I really don't. I almost didn't sleep at all last night, just so you know. I was up most of the night. So yeah, it's a great privilege to be able to be in this work and to watch people become bigger than they could ever believe they could be. Not every time, and I make zero promises. Let's just put that on there. But this is very common in regards to what we do.
Thank you so much for everything you're doing and for giving people their lives back.
Amen.
I do have one more question.
Yeah. I was counting.
This is the one that's, I like to just put my guests on the spot. What is your number one vitality secret?
I think the one that comes to mind right now is working your trauma. Everything seems to be connected to it. That your life force, like you were talking about, is stored inside. I see so many. The biggest thing that will prevent someone from having a very extraordinary outcome is whether or not they move back into their trauma mode. And I've seen this for some folks. You see them improve, and then they move back in their trauma. Elaine Goshaw, I've got a video of Elaine from back in the day. I mentioned her as the researcher that died in 2005, who recovered her child in 1960. She said, this is her words, okay? She said, if you see a child speaking sentences and doing better, you would have to be retarded. This is what she said. You'd have to be retarded not to continue, I would think. Those were her exact words. I know that video so well. Where she got that from is that she, and I see this too, see people start to improve or see their children start to improve, and something pulls them back, whether it's like one of the entities inside them or the fungal voice, and these things do attach to your nervous system and literally are a voice in your head. Whatever it is, they get grabbed, and it seems like their spirit in wanting to break through is not as strong as what's dragging them backwards. So to me, in order to improve your life force to be able to create what it is you want, the biggest way I find to increase your wattage, if you want to call it that, is to take care of what I call your trauma closet. And I find there's only 200, I've categorized these, there's only 240 things that can happen to a human that you can consider a trauma. There's only 240. And, like grief is one, betrayal is another. There's only 240. This is what I narrowed it down to. I'll show it to you, Neil. But let's just say, an entire universe of unlimited things, unlimited lights, unlimited frequencies, unlimited possibilities, there's only 240. And to me, that's a created thing. That has to be by intention and creation. I think there's 8 billion of us. We all have gifts. We're all different, and we're all handed these 240 things across our lifetime. If that's the fact, and that's my experience, and you can test that for yourself, but if that's true, that means that you can take those 240 things and block them and say that should have never happened. I don't want that to happen again, and use your frontal lobe to prevent that. And that's a lot of energy. Or you can go back and say, my mom died. I got a lot of compassion. I can do wheelies and wheelchairs. I'm fearless in front of situations and, some car accidents or whatever it is. I just go running. Like that happened because of my mom. It was a gift that I was given. I don't endorse her death, but I know that it happened and I got something from it. And I'm grateful for my gifts. I don't get pissed off at people during Hanukkah or Christmas that give me a gift. I'm not going to do that with God. So once you get to that place and you spend time unpacking the traumas, this opens up to awareness rather than worry. And when that happened to me, it was like, bang, that's how I can take 16 people in a space and help get them to a breakthrough, whereas before, that would cause a lot of stress. And now it's just like logic. And that's what I think our core is that. I think we've been hijacked with emotion and hijacked with stress and these things to keep us at a certain vibration and power and low power level. So my number one vitality secret, thank you for asking, to me is taking care of that trauma closet, is going back and I've got worksheets where you write down what shouldn't have happened. Where did you feel it in your body? How did you react to that person? How did you treat yourself? Okay. What gifts did you get? What did you miss in gratitude? And then when you start to connect the dots to what you got, this thing was not a trauma. This thing was a download. And big engines require big starters. The prophet's soul is especially afflicted because it has to become so large. To me, that is mastery of turning trauma into blessings is the number one thing that will, in my view, prevent you from being sick and also get you out of those conditions that you're stuck in. Because once you have more energy, like physical energy in your body flowing, your cells light up. And I believe the whole immune system is actually going on inside the red blood cells, not this other story of how the immune system works. I think I watched like 2 trillion cells change in 20 minutes. That doesn't happen, in my view, from those little white blood cells going from like this slow. So energy is the most important thing for your cell's recovery. And one of the number one things that's underrated is just take care of that trauma. Start to get yourself a connection with something bigger and realize that there's a language here of learning, and it's called one of 240 things that you can either turn into a trauma or look at as a blessing. How's that?
Damn, that's good. Body electric. It's all about the body electric.
Boogie woogie woogie.
Yeah. Just quickly, you said wheelies and wheelchairs. One of my closest friends was knocked off had a car accident, and he's been in a wheelchair for more than half his life. He's his late 40s now. Probably the most spiritually evolved person I know.
Amen. Yeah.
And he has found the gift in that tragic accident that put him in a wheelchair.
Yeah, and I bet when he goes into a room and he's got something to say, everybody's like, I want to hear what he has to say, because we know intuitively that if that guy mastered what he went through, he's a master, and I can learn from him. Anything can give you that power. My mastery in grief came from my mom dying. His power comes from literally being in a wheelchair. That's how it works with everything. And it's really important for you to point that out. Yeah, there's that one guy, I forget his name, but with no arms, no legs, and he comes out and he gives a TED Talk. And it's like everybody, you can't even get him as a speaker. Right. The guy's incredible. We all have that. We all have those opportunities thrown at us. There's 240 things being passed to you, to me, to Neil. And how we master that is our impact in the world while we're here. So, and if it's attached to our health, why not just become a good puzzle master of the 240 and get it done?
And it's a lot easier said than done. It's a lot easier than it appears.
It is easier than it appears, and it is harder to not do it.
Yes.
You just chronically have to pay for it every day, rather than rip the Band-Aid off and have to deal with a really tough day or 2 days or 20 minutes on a worksheet. Because honestly, I have one woman who and she doesn't mind me sharing. She had dementia. Okay, she was 71. She had a 63-year-old trauma. She lost her dementia symptoms to the best of her description, and she lost 63 years of trauma in an hour.
I noticed I started to forget not only the keys or something, but really, I had to go in and write my kid's birthday down because I was even starting to forget that.
How are you feeling? What happened?
Oh my gosh. My girlfriend told me about quantum healing, which is the best. Everybody over the age of 20 should have a 3-day session here. If you are 50, 60, it will put you back less. It will take at least maybe 30, 40 years off of your age. You will feel better. You will be energized. My eyesight is coming back. My memory is coming back. I'm just feeling wonderful, and I recommend this wholly to anyone that hears about this.
Now, you want to share how old you are?
Yes, I'm a beautiful 71.
Amazing.
And loving it. And I'm even back to skating. I'm going back to skating.
Really?
In a couple of weeks.
Wow.
I set an appointment with my girlfriend, so I'm back to skating.
Wow.
And as we get older, it's just a number. If you keep your body healthy and invest in yourself. We have kids, we have friends, we have house. You invest in the house, but the main thing you need to do is invest in you. If you're here, you need to invest in yourself. And this is coming to quantum healing and getting yourself supercharged and help.
Woo! Amazing.
Love that. Stan, thank you so much for everything you're doing.
You too, my friend, my brother.
It's been a real
Great
pleasure
job.
and honor meeting you, and
Same here.
I feel very blessed.
And building our relationship and spending time together.
I get to hang here, but thankfully, and very
fun
grateful
here.
to be here.
Yeah.
Learning all the
Anybody
time.
that has,
Similar Barbara.
Yeah.
Thank you. If this is on Instagram, if you comment below, and I will send you the details.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Good man.
Yes.
So smart.
Thank you, Stan.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Neil.
Pleasure.
Thank you.